Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Angel Borrelli Pitching. I am Angel Borrelli, and you are listening to The Fix, a teaching podcast for pitchers. This is Season 11, Episode 2, and today's topic is looking for velocity in all the right places. I am here with my catcher and co-host, Jacob Courtney, and before I bring him in, I just want to mention that I am going to be using tons of visuals to teach you today, and that you can access them by listening to my podcast on my YouTube channel called Angel Borrelli Pitching, or you can continue listening on whatever platform you're using, and then check out the visuals later. But the visuals are really dramatic and profound, so you don't want to miss them. Which brings me to one more piece of business, and I'm going to let Jacob tell you about my newest teaching project that I have for you. Hey, Jacob, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Angel. Excited to be on here with you. Another great day. The teaching tool Angel's talking about is our new Instagram page. It's going to be on Instagram at Angel Borrelli Pitching. On the Instagram page, we're going to be showing things such as examples, drills, and workouts that are coming straight from Angel, straight to her pitchers. It's going to be a great teaching for all of you guys. Check it out at Angel Borrelli Pitching. All right, Angel, I want to flip this back to you because I work with you many times a week, and I see you come in the dugout every day and have crazy things to talk about what's going on in the MLB, your favorite pitchers, why pitchers are getting injured, all of these different kinds of things. And I feel like they almost keep you up at night, Angel. So I wanted to reach out and ask you, what in the MLB has been keeping you up at night lately?
Okay, well, it's funny that you asked that. And actually, keeping me up at night isn't actually the right thing because I sleep like a baby. But I do wake up at 2:30 or 3 every day because that's when it's my favorite time to be creative and do all my research and design drills and do and exercises, etc. But there are some things right now, 3 things to answer your question that are on my mind right now, and they're burning a hole in my brain. Are one, I am hoping and praying that Cole, he's on his rehab throwing program right now. And I'm hoping that with his ulnar nerve thing, I'm hoping that he looked at his last video when he was taken out of the game, and that somebody has, looked at his mechanics, because when things like this happen, it is the body that is not liking some way that you use it. And an ulnar nerve irritation is very specific to usually deceleration. And I'm hoping that somebody has taken a look at this with him and that he is not going to return with the same, or that he's not throwing and practicing with the same style that caused the problem, because that would be ensuring that he's going to not feel like he's getting better. So I am hoping and praying that Cole does that. The other thing that I've been hoping and praying for at 2:00 in the morning is that Shohei take really good care of his arm. One of the things that people don't connect the dots are that a right-handed pitcher, if he hits lefty, he's exposing his right arm to more vulnerability, because now his right arm becomes his lead arm. I know everybody thinks, oh, it's so great to be a lefty hitter. And I've even heard parents say, hey, I want to make my kid be a lefty hitter and he's a right-handed pitcher. You don't understand the implications unless you really understand each sport movement. So I'm hoping that Shohei takes care of his right arm extra, because he is exposing it every day and every time he swings the bat. And we know he knows how to swing that bat.
Oh, yeah.
And the third thing and last thing that's really been on my mind is Spencer. Spencer, you forgot one of the biggest rules. Now, we know Spencer lifts weights, right?
Mm-hmm.
By looking at his lower body, you know that. And I've loved him for that. And I've never analyzed his mechanics, because when you look at him, he looks great. And of course, for me to do a good analysis, I have to see videos from 4 sides. So I only get to see what's on TV. But I'm good enough to where if I do analyze something from TV and it's only one view, I can make some inferences about what's happening. But I've never analyzed him, and he looks so clean going down the mound. And I have always been a fan of his, because I love that he knows that you have to, have a strong body to be able to get this skill done. And when I did analyze his motion from what was available, during his last appearance, what I saw, I didn't like. His arm went through some very strange gyrations, but it's not his arm that's the problem. The fact that his elbow hurts, the elbow is a wide receiver. It's not a quarterback. So when we talk about elbow, we got to look at shoulder. And when we look at shoulder, we have to look at shoulder girdle, which are your shoulder blades and your clavicle. And Spencer, your posture when you come out of the glove, that's where it started. You fix that and the rest is going to fix itself. So I'm praying that Spencer has somebody that is brave enough to show him this, because again, this is one of these things where people are afraid to have their mechanics adjusted. They feel like, oh, I'm going to lose my pitch or I'm not going to throw as hard. Guess what? If your body is rebelling against you, you're using it in a way that it doesn't like. And if you use it in a way that it's designed, whatever you're doing now, you're going to do better, but with less effort. And when you have less effort, you're going to have less injury, blah, 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 blah. So those are the three things that have been burning a hole in my brain, and I feel so good getting them off my chest. Do those make sense to you, Jacob?
Oh yeah, those are big time, especially with all the crazy injuries and the amount of injuries going on in the MLB, especially in the pitching world right now. I think it's really good to discuss what's going on.
Yes, I am very happy about the fact that it's being discussed. You know, I was mad at the MLB in 1995 when I first started working with pitchers. And I was at first mad at the MLB. But guess what? It's a business. And it's a business of baseball games. And baseball games are a business of winning or losing. And you're supposed to win. And pitchers are supposed to get outs. That's what they're hired for. And so when you take that job, you better be ready to take that job. Now, if you're somebody who's an employee, you better know how to do your job. So pitchers, once again, same thing I said last week, this is a time for pitchers to start taking responsibility, number one. And pitchers, you have a whole game that you're controlling. Don't be a baby about being afraid to have your mechanics and your style of delivery looked at. For people who do the kind of work I do, it is not a big deal. It should have no effect on you, but a good effect. And also, it's not like you wake up one day and it's like, oh man, I can't pitch anymore. No. When an adjustment is made, first of all, nobody's chaining you to a fence and saying, do this. Somebody shows you what you're doing. They kind of put their hands and maybe reform your structure, like I might do with Spencer. And then you say, now look at this. Now look at this. Now do this. And you haven't even thrown a ball. Now see this. And because somebody who works with structure, which is what I do, I work with the pitching motion and the pitcher. I don't work with pitching. So when you do that, you're not selling a bill of goods, because the body likes to move in a certain way. And for every one of you who are listening to this right now, if your back is sore while you're sitting, something's going on. It's something that's happening with your body. And its only language is to alert you with soreness, aggravation, then it goes to pain, and then it goes to complete lockdown, which is when things get inflamed and you can't move. So pitchers, take responsibility. And second, don't be afraid, because guess what? Every one of you has been given a gift. Not every guy gets up every day and says, give me the ball, coach. These are special guys. And from the first day, I looked in the eyes of my first pitcher that was referred to me. And I was a strength coach at that time. And that's the day I gave up all my athletes and said, I'm focusing on pitching. And I'll never forget being around him and thinking, this guy is cool. What he does is awesome. This skill is insane. And I want to do everything I can to help these kids have their dreams be fulfilled, but at the same time, to help these guys retain their job. So that's where I'm always coming from. And the fact that this is of a conversation now, number one, I feel so lucky to be on this side of the issue. To this day, I've been a strength coach for 45 years. I've worked with pitchers for going on 30 years now. I've never had an injury on my watch with my pitchers or with my Olympic weightlifters or with my strength and conditioning clients. And all of those are very intricate movements where if you don't do them with precision, you can get hurt. So with that in mind, I am excited that eyes and ears are wide open to what's going on right now. So with that being said, I want everyone to take a look at the first photo that I'm putting up. And Jacob, I'm going to want to bring you in on this because this is important. So everyone take a look at this. This is what we're talking about. And I'm going to put my money where my mouth is from the first podcast. So in the first podcast, if you remember, I talked about an article that was written by Ken Rosenthal in The Athletic, and it was on all the injuries, and it was on, and it was right at the beginning of this last few weeks when things really broke loose. And he's written a second article since then, but it's the same story. Everybody's confused, everybody's wondering. And in that response to that article, I mentioned about talking about the body and that you have to look at the way the pitchers are doing what they're doing. And this is what the hopeful thing is about right now. See, I always say, if you've had a problem and you've turned over a lot of stones and you can't find the solution, but you're also seeing some stones you didn't turn over, guess what? The solution might be under that stone. Nobody looks at the pitcher's body and how he's doing what he's doing, which is insane to me because he couldn't do anything unless he used his body. His pitching excellence is his head and his hand and a million other things that are kind of abstract, but the body is the concrete thing. So I talked about the lower body and I talked about everybody wants velocity, right? And guess what? You're not going to shut that down. We don't want to get in the way of progress. This is like saying, oh, we don't want better cell phones. Oh, we don't want faster computers. Oh, we don't want AI. Good luck. Try to shut down AI. That's going to be the same challenge as trying to shut down TikTok. I mean, you cannot get in the way of progress. So we look at the body. So now take a look at this pitcher. He's an MLB pitcher. Look at the front leg. Jacob, does that look like the front leg you might see on a hitter?
Yes, fully.
And why do you pull back the knee as you're hitting? Why, as a hitter, do you pull your body weight backwards?
So that you can open your hips up?
Well, you do it so you can stabilize, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you don't want to go forward with the bat, right?
No.
So you pull your body weight back so you have more strength with your upper body to rotate because you've got a long bat in your hand, right?
Exactly.
But think about it from stabilization. You don't want that knee bent. You don't want to be over the front the way a pitcher might be.
No, you want a strong leg when you hit. Strong front leg.
Exactly. And you want it pulled, you want your hip weight behind you, correct? Exactly. So this is what you're going to see on tons of pitchers. So when pitchers come to me, and I'm a forensic analyst, they come to me and they say, Angel, I have this pain or I have this problem or my velocity has gone down or why don't I have more velocity? The ball comes out of my hand hot. And my job isn't to say, oh, no, that's wrong. Velocity is going to make you throw harder. I'm in the solutions department. So what I first do is look to see, is there anything getting in the way of his velocity? And if a pitcher is pulling his front leg backwards to stabilize, he has not understood how to get his body weight over his leg. In other words, this pitcher here, he feels really strong like that. So this is a strength issue of him not understanding that hand that you see this guy's hand, it's about 2 inches in front of his foot. Now I want all of you to remember 2 inches in front of his foot. Look at the relationship of his hand to his foot. And then I want you to notice his head and his shoulders are above his ankle, but his ankle is way out in front of his knee. So he's not out in front of his foot. So I want you to remember that. The other thing is there's a hot word being used. I hear reporters talking about it all the time now on a lot of the baseball shows, extension. Extension is what in baseball is being called the ability of the pitcher to reach out in front. So, in fact, there are some tools of measurement that they have to see how much extension is he getting. Well, they would measure his extension from his back foot to his hand. But guess what? If that person measuring doesn't understand that that extension is going to look completely different and better if his hip is over his knee, that extension number doesn't mean anything because his butt is way behind him. And that butt should be over the knee, which I'm going to demonstrate in a second with some photos. So this guy has learned how to pitch like this. So you might say everybody does it. Yes. And if you practice something enough, you can do anything. And so is this guy not doing a good job? I'm not saying he is or he isn't. But what I'm saying is if this guy's looking for velocity, he needs to not go to external things and say, hey, give me this to throw, or let me use this tool, or let me do this crazy thing. How about looking to your body to be sure he's releasing closer to the plate? And also, that ball will get there faster. Also, he's deceiving the hitter even better. But guess what? He's putting more of his weight behind the ball. Jacob, can you see how this pitcher would have to effort to reach out hard to throw that ball with his butt being held so far behind him?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you see the rear leg is in what we call flexion, and that knee is dropping to the ground, and so his lower body is saying, "Whoa, I don't want to go down the hill. This is how I keep from going down the hill." His job is to go down the hill and be stable. Now, he feels stable like this, but he's not getting the velocity that he could. And I don't care if this guy throws 105. He could throw harder. I don't care what he's doing. This is still an effort that isn't necessary. And also, it's incorrect movement. The knee does not like to be pulled back in that fashion. And when you're doing it as a hitter, you're upright more and you're using bigger muscles to produce this position. This pitcher is not using the correct muscles to produce this position. He can't because he's pitching, not hitting. So that knee is vulnerable. You show this to any knee specialist, you show this picture, they're going to say, whoa, that knee, because knees need to be over the ankle to have strength. So I want everyone to remember, and the reason why we're having this discussion, and this goes back to that you have to do all these crazy things to have velocity. No, you have to use your body correctly to maximize the velocity that's already in you. So now let's go to the second photo.
All right.
So I have a picture. You know this picture, Jacob, and there's Jacob, everybody. Okay, so this is one of my pitchers who happens to have really long legs, and it's real easy to get into this. And by the way, most kids learn how to hit before they learn how to pitch, and they know they have to stabilize the front leg by pulling back. So, I mean, that picture you saw, he's been pulling his leg back like that forever because it's what you learn in hitting and you feel so strong. Why wouldn't you do it in throwing? So this is not like some crazy thing that pitchers do. There's a reason why it is morphed into that. So here's a pitcher with really long legs. He's a good hitter. And I wanted to talk to him about this issue of getting over the front leg. So I said, the first thing I do with a pitcher when I'm talking about mechanics is I say, I have to give them feel. Pitchers are feel guys. Plus, you just don't throw stuff at pitchers on the mound and say, hey, do this, do that. And I am a muscle person. I am a movement person. I'm a motion person. So I give clients feel. And of course, having been a strength coach my entire life, I understand how the body moves in terms of exercises. So I put Rollin on the bench. His back leg is his back foot stabilized on the ball of the foot. I had him get into the perfect front leg position. And this is what a front leg should look like. It should look like the knee is above the ankle. There's about a 45-degree angle on the thigh. The back leg is pulled long, and his butt is actually in extension, and his knee is in extension. It can have a slight bend in it, but that is in extension. And he's up on the bench to give him that feel of being out front the way he would be downhill. And I had him reach out to where his release point was. Now, the reason why you see Jacob's hand where it's at is when I first put him in this position. And by the way, guys, everybody, the 2 feet are hip width apart. In other words, I've talked last week about the left leg sometimes getting too far to the right. Just imagine this if his left leg were way towards Jacob's side. He would be falling all over, and that's what it's like when a pitcher crosses over. But anyway, so the feet are hip width apart. So when I first put Rollin in this position, and the forward movement from this in mechanics and biomechanics and in kinesiology, we call this a trunk tilt. And this tilt is something that is notable on really good pitchers. And the trunk is tilting from the hip joint in the left leg. So when I first put Rollin in this position, it was real interesting. I saw that he wasn't actually tilting forward as much as he could. So I asked Jacob to to put his hand right up where the release point was, just like he's doing here. But I asked him to put his hand backwards by about X number of inches. Jacob, do you remember that moment?
Yeah, Rollin thought he was at his full potential, and then you told him he
Yes.
had more inside of him.
Yes. And so for the audience, when I was filming this in the dugout, I filmed the first position also. And if you look at the dugout wall, that's a pretty clean dugout for dugouts, isn't it? Look at
Yep.
how organized everything is. If you look at the back wall by the gate, you'll see the white board. Next to it, you see something hanging. Okay. His hand was probably right past that black thing hanging, just a little, maybe halfway between the distance of that and Jacob's hand. So I told Jacob to put his hand further back. And remember, this is a still shot. So this is showing his physical, skeletal capabilities of reaching forward. He can't go much beyond this. Now, remember, if he's doing this when he's pitching, he's moving forward, he's accelerating, he's got momentum, he's got a million things going on. And as he's moving forward over that front leg, which is so nicely placed, this is going to be powerful. But you have to understand it in a non-moving way before you can apply it to acceleration. So, Jacob, your hand moved. How far back did we move it? About 3-4 inches?
Yeah, maybe even 5. It was a big
Yeah.
difference.
It was huge, which you're going to actually see once we took this to the hill. And something that I want to mention to everybody, because it might be easier to see when I have this in this position here. The knee has to be over the ankle, and pitchers reach out with their foot to stride, and that knee is going to be behind the ankle, just like it is when we saw on that first MLB pitcher. But what he's supposed to do is be using his back leg against the ground to move his entire structure into this position, because this lower leg position, which is critical because the entire motion happens over the left leg, the knee and ankle position and that thigh position are critical to having strength in that leg and support for the knee. And the knee joint is just as vulnerable as an elbow joint. So this is a very important position that pitchers need to understand. And they need to train in the gym with things that accentuate this kind of skill, because this is a strength position. So anyway, this is what I did to teach my pitcher feel for not just his capability, but for his own body. And of course, I'm telling him what to feel and what muscles working. So now let's go to the third picture. And now we took it to the hill. So you see Jacob holding this little contraption that one of my other catchers made for me. That blue thing is actually not solid. I had Rollin get on and sort of do the position that he was doing in the gym on the bench. So you see him, and I'm asking Jacob to put the little thing, we don't have a name for it. That's why it's so hard to talk about it. Have him put that little crazy device around right where he put it, because I wanted you as the audience to see his fingertips in the ball. So you know that's his ball release. And again, he's not moving. So if we looked at this with him moving, that ball would be way out in front. Notice his shoulders are at the tip of his foot. And by the way, Rollin is built with very long legs and a very short upper body compared to his legs, I should say. So for him reaching out front is really critical, because if he played to the length of his legs, his hand wouldn't be as far out as in front. So him learning how to tilt is critical. So that's where his hand position was, in a still position. So then I said to him, he did not move from that first position. And I said, Rollin, pull your knee backward the way that you sometimes do when you're pitching. And this is the thing we're working on. I said, don't move from this, but pull the knee backward and let's see what happens. The backward pull of his knee changed his position, and look at the difference in where the ball ended up. And Jacob, do you remember that we were both blown away by that?
Yeah, it was a very, very crucial change.
Yeah, it was a very crucial change. So just to sum everything up, and we've got only two more photos to look at, what you're really looking at is a pitcher who, and Rollin is a sophomore in high school. In a game, he's around 88. He's hit 91. He's an excellent pitcher. He's a sophomore. He's the number one pitcher on varsity. He strikes guys out. He's been my client since he was 10. He's never had an injury. We stay on top of every soreness that he gets, but he wants more velocity because he knows he's got to get into the 90s consistently. So he's 90, 91 in a bullpen easily, but he wants to hit his spots because he's been taught that location is what you need to have. So he wants more velocity. So, and I don't do any external means to get velocity unless I see a pitcher who's maximizing everything in his body. I mean, I wouldn't even consider it then because of injury potential, but the body itself has to be strong enough and powerful enough to execute its own velocity. And if you haven't done that, there are stones yet unturned. So until we would turn all those stones over, no one could say, hey, I reached my max velocity and I need to do something crazy to get more. So this is what I needed to show him so that he knows he can do better with the ball that he's releasing. And so the byproduct of, by the way, getting over the front leg, so the ball is released closer to the plate, so it gets there faster. So with the same ball being released closer, it gets there faster. The perceived velocity on the hitter is greater. Jacob, when a pitcher's releasing, when you're facing a pitcher that has the ball coming right at you, you can tell the difference, right?
Oh, yeah. The perceived velocity is something that a lot of people don't talk about. That is a big factor as a hitter. When someone can get the ball like a foot closer to the plate and release it, it's a scary change.
Yeah, it's a scary change, a scary change. So this is something that is very important. Now, here's the byproduct of this. Velocity is a byproduct of the way you use your body. It's not an extra thing that you go looking for. And when you are attempting, and this is what I meant by practicing still gives you results. When you are attempting and learning to position your leg correctly to release out in front, and it's the leg and the hips that are going to need to move correctly. The arm's attached to the trunk. The trunk and the arm are this piece, and they need to be positioned correctly over your leg. If you position your leg correctly and learn how to get your hips over your leg, which is what the skill is, you're going through the ball differently. You are using more of your body weight against the ball. So the first MLB pitcher we looked at, he left half it's probably a third of his body weight on the mound. He did not have it behind the ball. So Rollin, in attempting this, when he throws and attempts this, even though directly when the ball's released closer, that may not add velocity. you're releasing the ball closer means you had to use your body differently, means you had more pounds against the ball, means you tilted better, means you had more stability, and that gives you more velocity. If you put more of your body weight behind the ball and your shoulders moving rapidly like it already does, you're going to have a ball that moves faster. So there's tons of byproducts when it comes to what we call efficiency of the motion. So, second to the last photo. So, here's a drill I want everyone to do. So, all you pitchers out there, this is the drill you can practice. And if you notice, this looks like a single leg RDL. It looks like something that you can practice the strength of the front leg. You can practice this all day. You can practice this when you're doing throwing drills. You can practice this playing catch. And this is the drill that you want to do. Notice the position of the body. Notice when he's at the top, he hesitates because I need to see he owns that. And if you can own movement when you're doing it in a static way and not throwing a ball, if you own it then you can attempt to own it during your motion. Now, the last photo I want to show you, I wanted to show you what this looks like in motion. And this is a very special photo that I want to share with you. So most of you have heard me talk about Joe Demers, who was my client since he was 10 years old. And he went all the way through into the minor league system, and his journey ended there. On his last day, he still had not had any injuries. He was throwing 92 to 94 as a senior in high school, which is what you're looking at here. And he hit 95. And I want to explain something about this. Joe is a pitcher that knew how to pull his body up over his leg. Joe is not that tall. He's about 6 feet, 6'1". This is him pitching in a championship game as a senior against De La Salle High School. He has legs that I'm 5 feet, maybe 5'2". He has legs pretty much the length of mine. So you're going to see a front leg that actually is a different height than what I recommended for the drill. And for Joe, in fact, I talked to him about this a lot. For Joe, that is the position his leg needed to be in, because his upper body is the length and his arm is the length of someone who's 6'4". So for him, and this is, working with pitchers, it teaches you about how smart the body is. For him, going downhill and catching his body weight, and he was a big guy, and he's been lifting weights since he was 11. So we taught him this strength. He developed this strength. This is the position his leg needed to be in. Notice he's got the components of the trunk tilt. Now, here's what you're going to see, because the knee does extend. And, people talk about knees are extended in pitchers, but they don't talk about where the knee extends at. So you'll see somebody saying, oh, he has his knee extended, like the first pitcher I showed you, but it's extended when his hips were too far back. So the knee has to go into extension when you're already over the leg. So notice his lower leg. Notice in the first frame, he's got his position that for him is what he needed. As he was moving forward, notice that in space, his hips, meaning where his back pockets are and where his front pocket would be, he took that pelvis and he moved that over his left leg. And he did that through the strength of his left leg, his hamstring, his glute muscles on stretch. His hamstrings are doing that. The push from the back leg is helping him. His ground reaction force from the right leg is pushing his hip up. He had stabilized his lower leg so well in the first frame that he was able to keep that stabilization, move up over the leg. Now imagine he's moving, and the pitching motion takes less than 2 seconds. It's closer to 1 second. So he's moving over that leg with all his body weight, reaching out, and look how far over he got it. And that was all happening prior and during ball release. He didn't come into a perfect follow through, as you see in the third frame, after the ball was released. He came into that during the release. And a lot of these guys you see, like the guy in the major league photo I showed you, I don't know what he looked like in follow through, but they all come forward and end up over the leg. So someone might say, oh no, look it, he's over his leg. No, you have to be over it when you're releasing the ball, not after. After tells you were going in the right direction, but you weren't putting the weight at the right time in the acceleration path. So this guy right here, he was maximizing every mile per hour that he had in his body. So this is the display of what you do when you're trying to release out front. That's heavy, isn't it, Jacob, when you see this?
Yeah, I think this is a great example photo, though.
Yeah, because it's like, well, what does it look like in real live action? And I'll tell you something. And the purpose of this discussion to the audience is that you have to look for velocity in the right places. And when you look for it in the wrong place, meaning something external that you're going to bring into your motion, you run the risk of injury. So the guy in the first photo, if I handed him weighted balls and said, I want you to develop your shoulder acceleration, this would be me giving him a gun and telling him to shoot himself in the foot. If you are going to search for external means, you have to have looked towards your body to make sure you're doing everything right. Because if you're not, you don't want to put stress, because if you're not doing something right, but you're pitching, that means something is working hard enough to get you to get the job done. But if you add these extra pieces to it, you're making yourself vulnerable to injury. So the thing that's so important is to start to believe that everything happens in the body. And Jacob, I feel it's always confusing to me to have to remind people that the body is doing the pitching. And so if something goes wrong with the pitching, you have to look at the pitching motion. And if something's going wrong with the body, you have to look at the pitcher's body.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not, I think it's funny because I work with this every day. So it's not a shock to me or a surprise. But do you think that pitchers, because you're around pitchers all day, hanging out with them, do you think pitchers look to their body for how they could use it better?
Not always. Like you said, they kind of the smart ones will look towards their body and see what they can correct, but a lot of them look for the external things that what can I do? What can I throw that's going to make me throw harder? What can I move to make me throw harder instead of looking at their body and internally?
Yeah. So, in closing on this topic, and I wanted this to be a display of what I talked about last week, and also to show the difference in the way you use your body and the effects that it can have. The first pitcher has to use a lot more effort. When you say something looks effortless, when pitchers throw more efficiently, they feel it's effortless. If they practice pitching incorrectly with their motion, let's say their motion's goofed up, if they practice it enough, they can do a good job at it. But when we're talking about not getting injured, you have to look at the thing that's getting injured, and you have to assume that that's the thing that's being misused. So yesterday they interviewed Tyler Glasnow at the game, and somebody sent me the interview, and he's somebody that's on my mind because I don't want him to get injured again. But he said that he thought it was just something that happened and that there was no solution. And you have to just know that it's something that's going to happen. Clayton Kershaw was interviewed, and I read that interview in The Athletic this morning. He kind of said, believe it or not, what I'm thinking, which is let's stop talking about the velocity and this and that. Let's talk solutions. And the solution that has not been looked at is somebody taking a look at the way these guys are doing what they're doing. So what has to happen right now, and this is why I mentioned the guys that are on my mind. So pitchers, if you're on the IL right now and now you're returning, please take a look at the way you did what you did when you were injured so that you don't do it again now that you're starting your throwing program. So changing something minor can make a huge difference. And in fact, it is the way your body's doing something that it doesn't like. Your body breaking down is your body saying, I don't like what you did. And yes, are there injuries that are from wear and tear? Yes. Are there injuries from somebody maximizing their velocity? Yes, but more so if you're not using things correctly. And by the way, the elbow injuries, as I said, the elbow is a very unusual joint. It's in the middle of your shoulder and wrist. The elbow itself is receiving things, and things are passing through it. And the forearm position is in the forearm health is critical to elbow health. But if you use your shoulder incorrectly, your elbow gets into positions that it doesn't want to be in. And when the elbow gets into a funny angle, the forearm rotates on its own. And then the pitcher has to fight with his hand to get it to straighten out to be behind the pitch. And remember, all that's happening in milliseconds. And these guys are so good, they go through that. What we don't want is to have that happen. So I'm praying that pitchers, instead of just hearing the dark side of this, know that there are options out there and there are solutions, and nobody has yet given the body the respect that it needs, because a motion injury is caused by the thing that's producing the motion, not the thing you're throwing. It's the way you're throwing. And that is the take-home message from this podcast today. So, Jacob, do you think I said everything clearly enough? Is there anything I missed in this journey we've been on the last few weeks?
No, I think you did a great job today, Angel, and I think this is going to be really helpful for a lot of pitchers and a lot of young pitchers that are looking at these MLB guys and wondering what's happening. So I think if you take everything Angel says and just think about it internally, you're going to find great success.
Yeah, and actually what I want everyone to find is hope.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I want. I want everyone to have some hope and to not just see the dark side of this. So, in closing, if you want to contact me about any of this, and thank you so much for all the responses. In fact, I've gotten so many calls from worried parents, and actually I've gotten a lot of thank you calls as well. So if you want to contact me, you can email me at angel@gymscience.com. That's Gym Science, which is one word. You can go to my website, email me from there. It's Angel Borrelli Pitching. You can email me from there. You can see my office number, and you can call me. And now my Instagram page, as Jacob said, we got it up and running last week. So you'll see some of these photos with, quick 90-second descriptions. But so you can quickly take a look at them there. I don't have the same number of photos, but there are a few of them that are on there. And please visit all my pages and keep coming back as a listener. I appreciate it. So, Jacob, thanks again for a great job today.
Of course. Thank you, everyone, for listening as well and tuning in every week.
Yes, and thank you for listening. And we will be back at you in 3 weeks.